6:30 on the dot. I'll just do a quick introduction. Okay. Well, 6:30, and I wanted to thank all of you for coming out here this evening. I'm Todd Fontanella with the Western Connecticut Council of Governments. We sent out information about a program that we started this year, which is to help our municipalities and our residents and business people understand the federal flood program, the federal insurance program guidelines, and also investigate further whether there were opportunities to take advantage of those programs, particularly as some of them are annual programs and they require a fair amount of work and expertise to navigate them. So that's why we're here tonight. We engaged the consulting team of Dewberry, Scott Chiquette, and David Murphy from Resilient Land and Water is here with us tonight. They'll be giving the presentation and then following up with you individually to talk about your specific questions and answers and provide you with answers. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Can you guys hear me in the back? They have the microphone. Maybe we'll just do a quick round of introductions. This is not going to take anywhere near as long as the time on the agenda presentation piece. We're probably only Scott Chiquette with Dewberry Engineers, project manager of the project.
David Murphy, helping out, consultant to Dewberry.
No, Alan Kravitz from Westport, no part of this presentation except
We're just
Steve Woodard, also from Westport, turns out we're neighbors. Eager to learn what's available.
Yeah, Mike Vitelli from Old Greenwich, and my property docking by both Irene and Sandy, and yeah, curious to see what's available. Right? I knew there was a program that was available right after Sandy that some people in my neighborhood, fairly low-lying neighborhood, took advantage of. I thought it was a great effort among their part of a long time to take advantage of that. I had no idea that things were still available.
David and Barbara Leader at Westport, also been by Sandy, Irene, and also the first one.
Alan Coolidge, also Westport. This one, I did the turned out nice.
Rob Luke and Meg McCreary, we live here in Japan.
I'm Erica Dunn. I work in the city of Stamford in the Land Bureau, but I live in Westboro as well.
Should have done it.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Shea, we live off Rock Spring Road, that's a clue, record flooding during Ida in the basement. FEMA came with an intake that lost the paper, come here to find out. They had some earlier in the year deadline and dropped the ball, and I need to go to the hurdle because what shot.
I'm over from advisors because of the Stanford I work with.
And I'm Harris.
you have to be here.
I don't understand the language.
Yeah, so these programs are a pain to navigate. I've been with Dewberry for 20 years now. Before that, I was with the state of Connecticut for 9 years. So I've been working on these programs almost 30 years. They haven't changed a whole lot in those 30 years. But the good news is there's a lot of money available right now, more than ever historically, for this type of resilience mitigation work. And the second bit of good news is that the COG recognize the challenges that the cities and towns have with resources, assisting people, and found some money to hire us to provide a limited amount of assistance with the programs. This is what we're here to kick off tonight. Got through the introductions. I'm going to talk about the available FEMA programs, the process of going through the mitigation grant application process, who's kind of doing what support we can provide and can't provide. Then we'll have a question and answer session. And if there's time afterwards and we can do it logistically with as many people, we'll stick around and do some breakout groups to talk more about your individual circumstances and start gathering data if you're interested in moving forward. Otherwise, we have a sign-up sheet where we'll schedule some online meetings, do the same thing at a different date. This is at no cost to you, by the way, so just no advertisements or commercials here. 3 programs that we're going to talk about tonight: the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, and the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program. Very similar programs, but each with their little quirks, benefits, pros and cons. So the first one is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. This one is available after there's a presidentially declared disaster declaration, and it makes about 15% of the damage from that disaster available after the fact to do mitigation projects like home elevations and acquisitions and drainage and culverts, a whole variety of things. But we're here to talk about acquisitions tonight. So it does traditionally require a 25% cost share, meaning the grant covers 75% of the cost of the project, and you are responsible for the other 25%. Occasionally, towns or the state will help with that, but usually not. Currently, for the 2 open disasters that we have, as part of the recovery, bipartisan infrastructure bill, some of the recovery money is helping to put more funding into these programs. So the government decided to reduce the cost share to 90-10 for this round. So that's beneficial. So the way it works is you apply, the state is the grantee. So the applications go from the communities up to the state. State prioritizes and reviews the applications for compliance and sends them forward to FEMA. If the grant is awarded, the state is the grantee. Westport or Stamford or whatever the town is, or maybe even in some cases WestCOG for this project, would be the sub-grantee, and they would contract with you almost like a general contractor doing a construction job. And so you would work with your town or with the COG, Council of Government, on the process. And all of these programs are set up following that same framework. There is an insurance. There are insurance requirements. If you receive a grant, you're required to maintain flood insurance on your house for the life of your ownership. It might even be a restriction. So the next order, I don't recall. But you have to keep that insurance, which obviously if you're like. And there are currently 2 open disaster declarations. There's one, DR 4629, which has to do with the remnants of Hurricane Ida, which I believe is 2021, and then the COVID pandemic. So interesting with the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, even with the disaster being related to COVID, you can fund flood mitigation projects with it. If there is a earthquake in northeastern Connecticut, you can do mitigation projects. So as long as it's an eligible project, you can do that with HOGP money. So with the 90-10 cost share, this one is sort of one of the favorable of the 3 programs currently. One slightly easier to apply for. The next.
In the package you had sent around, you said that the application period was only until November this year. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I meant to say that. I meant to talk about that. Yeah. So yeah, and I thought I had the slide there. If I don't, I got it here. I'll write down a note. But the package that went out did say that the deadline to apply to the state was November 15th. We discovered that they recently extended that. So for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the new deadline to the state is January 15th, with a January 27th deadline for the state to move the lower speed on. That's for HOGP. For the next 2 projects I'm going to talk about, the deadline is December 3rd, with a January 27th deadline. So there's a little bit more time. May still be very difficult in that short amount of time to get applications completed. We have to have somebody like who submitted an application already that wants to resubmit it, or it's not impossible if we work quickly, but a lot of this may unfortunately be preparing solid packages for either the next round next year, or unfortunately the next disaster declaration, which we soon to have before June. So the last program I talked about has to come after a president or disaster. It seems like we have one every 2 or 3 years. We tried to get it recently, but obviously we don't want one. We can't count on one. So the flood mitigation assistance program is annual. It opens in September. As I just said, the grant application deadline is December 2nd to the state. This one is designed pretty much specifically to address homes or businesses that are insured by the National Flood Insurance Program. So elevations, acquisitions, small drainage projects that prevent damage to insured buildings. So the emphasis here is on insured. It's also designed to focus on repetitive loss properties, and we'll talk more in a few minutes about what that is. But so for this program, it's a 75-25 program like they all are usually. If you're a repetitive loss program or repetitive loss property, that cost share goes down to 90-10. And if you're a severe repetitive loss property, it can go down all the way to, or it can be 100% grant. It's really focused on getting repeat flooded properties off of the insurance rolls or insurance program. Same exact grantee, sub-grantee contract relationship, same insurance requirements. Yeah.
What cost the cover? And this is mitigation, so obviously it's not attached to that. So what do they cover in that grant?
Things that prevent flood losses from happening again.
So if you raise it, this is in our case, we're thinking about we can raise the house.
Yes.
That would fall into that category, but there's a lot of things that go when you raise it.
Okay, yeah, you're talking about the specifics of what it'll.
Yeah, just I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, good question. So it will pay for the elevation of the house, they'll lift it up, put it down on the new foundation piece, which is ironically the cheaper piece of it all. It'll pay for the foundation, it'll pay to reattach stairs, decks, things like that. It won't pay for anything cosmetic, it won't pay for landscaping, any of those associated things. Basically the bare minimum construction stuff that you need to do to attaching the mechanicals.
Plumbing, disconnecting electricity, lifting it up, taking care of it, dropping it down.
But when I went through the process, and I had to raise my house probably 5 feet. So the stairs would have to go 5 more feet.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't allow me to put I have a special needs daughter. They wouldn't allow me to put a landing there because the stairs would be pretty tall going up. They wanted me to build it straight up and then tear it down later to build the landing. Because I'm not going to have it go straight up. So they wanted me to build it that way and then tear it down, put a landing that way. So the whole process, and that was part of my frustration with the whole process. So yeah, like, okay, I'm paying for that, and I got to put it down.
I'm not surprised to hear that, and a lot of it, there's a lot of discretion in the administration of these programs. So
Right.
if you had a different person, they might have reached a different conclusion. It is challenging, but the rule of thumb is they'll pay for, to make the home that's functional again.
But they will, and I can't remember the process of getting paid because we didn't went through it, but it's upon completion or is it progress paid?
It's progress payments based on reimbursements. So the COG or the city or town they submit typically quarterly based on progress, and then we'll actually go through some of it.
Yeah, sorry.
But when you say it's an annual grant program, it's just each year, or you don't have to worry about obviously you got applications due in November, December 3rd. You do this year. And we take any solace to the fact that we can do it next year.
Yes, we can miss this year, the deadline is December 3rd. We could submit it in January and have it start getting reviewed for next year's round. But they'll take them and put them on the shelf and fit them to the best program.
Typically you have to raise it to the, flood height regulations, so let's say it's 4.5, 5 feet.
Yeah.
But you say, well, I want to do it 6 or 7 feet because I want to go to 100. Is that kind of thing where you start getting into, they say, well, if you're not, if you raise it 1 foot higher than we need you to raise it, the whole thing's off, or how does it work if it's not compliant with their idea of what's to be done?
So FEMA sets minimum standards. So they say you have to elevate to the base flood elevation, but cities and towns can go above and beyond. The state has a minimum of 1 foot 3-corner requirement. So almost everybody, all the cities and towns have that now. Some have 2, some have 3.
But so that doesn't disrupt this program then?
No, but if you, for instance, WestCOG and that building department, that you got a whole building permit.
Of course, yeah.
All right, so what they said to us is the fact that if the elevation gets too high,
Right.
first floor all of a sudden that's considered a story, and that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of the coastal towns also have it.
They have an allowance for it, you have to raise it.
But that's,
Go up, yeah, right,
exactly
exactly.
what the building department said.
Yep.
What can I do?
Yep.
To keep more?
This view shed.
But if you're complying with the local building code, this program, it's not like, per se.
Yeah, people will pay for the extra 2 feet if it's required.
And in terms of insurance, it's the same insurance requirements. Well, if you're elevating your house because you need to meet the FEMA requirements, what insurance requirements are there after that?
There's always residual risk. So the whole program is based on a 1 storm scenario. So
They just want you to, they're gonna give you this big grant, so they want you to keep paying it.
Assume that your insurance is really lower after you elevate your house.
Yes.
So, right, that's how it happens.
Yes, and I think your point earlier, if you sell it, they will, even if they're a cash buyer, will be required to maintain that forever.
if they're a cash buyer, yeah,
Even
yes,
if they're
to
a
make-
cash buyer,
correct.
they still have to-
The FEMA part.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so there is residual risk. It's a 1% annual chance. So, you know, chance for 10 years left. So yeah. So back to I mentioned different cost share percentages for repetitive loss or severe repetitive loss. Rep loss is a pretty easy threshold. At least 2 paid flood claims of more than $1,000 each in any given 10-year period. So you can become a rep loss and then fall off of the rep loss list depending on the timing of your events. But currently, that's the definition in a lot of the, because we had 2 back-to-back storms in 2021, and with Sandy being relatively close, there's a lot of properties on the rep loss list now that could slide off of it after with Sandy aging out, but it's a pretty low threshold. Severe rep loss is 4 or more claims with payments of more than 5,000, including building and contents, or 2 or more separate claim payments, building only where the total exceeds the current value of the property within that 10 years of each other. So these are the kind of categories of properties they wanted with the FMA program the most. That's why they do the additional insurance. The RIC program, some of you might remember the pre-disaster mitigation program. RIC replaces that one. It has a lot of money associated with it. Currently over $1 billion in 2022. It's also an annual program on that same window, December 2nd, January 27th. And is competitive annually, is competitive at a national level. It's really not, it allows elevations and acquisitions, but it's really designed more for larger infrastructure projects. This project in New Haven is working its way through for 25 years. Applying to a whole bunch of properties. So it's designed for very large projects, but it can be used for what we're trying to do here. The challenge with this one is you do get additional points if your project is in an area where there's social vulnerability or disadvantaged people, and you get credit for green infrastructure projects to reduce the climate change. So not a great program for the county, but there are pockets of social vulnerability in Stanford and some of the other Norwalk and some of the other towns around. So it's not out of the question. This would be my last choice for the type of stuff that we're trying to do. If you have a project with a spectacular benefit cost and ratio and everything else is perfect, you may not need those extra points. So we don't rule it out for that reason.
This type of program, so that basically that could advantage the South End because there's a whole bunch of houses that are in a constant, I guess, high tide zone. Okay, and then who again price this kind of support? That's the city or?
Yeah, so the city would work with you as the homeowner. We help with the application. That's what we're contracted to do. But the city has to be on board, and then it gets either comes through the city or through the COG, and then you apply to the state. The state reviews and approves and sends it up to FEMA. So if you get the grant, it becomes a contractual relationship between the city and you. So the state is the grantee, the city or the town is the sub grantee, and they contract with them.
Right, because I would state that and just saw a couple weeks ago on the Google Maps, some of the latest updates. But this is constant present. I only can people that live in these homes in the middle.
Yeah,
it's coming in and you're figuring out in the city.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I should have mentioned. I should have mentioned too that if we're going to talk in a minute about benefit cost analysis, how big a part that plays, but you can also aggregate projects. So like in that part of the city, if you have 5 houses you want to buy out to build a park or something, if 1 or 2 of them don't perform well enough or don't yield a good benefit cost ratio, but in aggregate with the other ones, you can get up over that ratio of 1. You can do the whole project as one.
Yeah, I would have lived for it, and you're like dependent program, and basically every major storm rolled into it, but central and even downtown, right? Flood. So if they were to say go to watershed down there, does that kind of fall into this, or?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, good. That would be. It would not be a good match for FMA, but for HOGP or RIC, that was the type of projects. And part of this project that we're doing for the COG is looking at doing those types of large infrastructure related projects as well. Tonight's meeting just happens to be focused on all water types. All right, so I think I covered most of this. Yeah, so focus on green infrastructure, community lifelines, social vulnerability, same grant relationships. This one also has, it's not applicable so much to you all, but it has a capability and capacity building component. So like if Stanford wanted to start up a program in that neighborhood, for example, to provide support to people, you can actually get a grant to fund the support, or like the WestCOG can apply for a grant to fund us, to hire us to provide support like this. So, and also design, permitting, larger project.
I'm sorry, getting back to the previous ones, what is the cap on the individual basis? So remember when I was doing that, I can't remember, it was like 70,000 or 75 or something like that. Is there a dollar cap? So, and I don't even know how much more expensive it is now. Yeah, and I'm sure. So is there a cap as to how much any individual homeowner?
There's not a cap, but it becomes very hard to get a good positive benefit cost ratio. I mean, the cost of the project has to be less than the benefits you're going to get for not getting flooded going forward. So that there's no single dollar cap, but that's a limiting factor.
The towns might
What town was? So they might have had local, they might have said we didn't want to deal with this.
Yeah, because it was originally like 100,000.
Yeah, the state might have done that too. So, as I said, these go up to the state. The state gets to prioritize. Back in 2012, the program was with deep and not with emergency management, and they were not fans of elevations.
Okay.
They preferred acquisitions. So they could do things like that to try to limit the number of elevation projects.
Gotcha.
That hurdle doesn't exist anymore. All right. So now the role of partners, I jumped ahead and covered some of this already, but again, for probably the third time, FEMA provides the grant, provides oversight. DEMIS at the state level receives the applications, prioritizes them, gives them a preliminary review. There's a Connecticut Interagency Hazard Mitigation Committee, which, as the name implies, is just a bunch of agencies, DOT, DEEP, emergency management, and others who have some say in the prioritization each year, but it's really mostly done by emergency management. And then we talked about the role of the cities and towns as the general contractor, the property owners. Some of the requirements, the benefit cost analysis, this is the sticking point and what kills most applications. So you have to prove that for every dollar the government is going to spend, you're going to save more than $1 in the future. There's a couple different ways of doing that. There's model losses, where the model will look at a flood scenario and extrapolate that out over time with the return frequency and determine like the useful life of the project, which is normally 50 years, how many times you might get this flood, which will put this much water in your house and cause this much damage. If you have claims from historical losses, you can model it based on those claims. But the model essentially determines how much water is going to get into the property based on the studies behind the mapping. And then there's a depth of damage curve that looks at, 6 inches of water causes this much damage per square feet, whereas 2 feet of water causes X amount of damage. So it's model losses, and you need pieces of information in order to run the model. My firm managed FEMA's benefit cost analysis hotline under contract with FEMA for 10 years, so we've got a lot of experience and know the kind of ins and outs of the model, what FEMA looks for, all of these things. But so we can run a model without all the data, and we as part of this project we'll do that as a screening. So we'll collect data from you, we'll screen for elevation, we'll screen for acquisition. We'll come back and say, looks like you have a really good chance at elevation. These are the pieces of information we'll need to kind of fine tune the model.
So, let's say you look at your cost, you look at the contract, and you say $100,000 for every wall. And then you do the model says actually it justifies $70,000 or $50,000, let's say $50,000. Can you then just apply for 50 and the rest you change your effective ratio? So it's not like the thing is thrown out, it's just you're applying to that level. Is that how that works?
Unfortunately, they don't allow that.
So basically, if it costs more than the benefit, like you get zero.
Right. Yeah. With a couple exceptions to that. And it's very difficult. We have a similar project in Darien right now, and we've had some challenges. We looked at 10 properties, and only about 4 of them are we able to get them to pass the benefit cost ratio. And out of those 4, like 2 were like, we're really going to have to argue hard to get it through. One of the things, for example, without boring you with details, the benefit cost module still uses $100 per square foot as a replacement value for a home. The average in Lower Fairfield County is like $350. So we have to convince FEMA, we have to do the research and convince.
Yeah.
The model is a discount rate. They finally just adjusted it to the discount rate that they were using in like 1995. Effective November 1st. So this is why a lot of them fail on the BCA, because even people who do BCAs but only do like 1 a year or 1 every 5 years, there's a lot of little intricacies. There's things you can adjust. There's regional adjustment factors. There's things you can do, but pretty much at the screening level, you can tell if the tweaking around the edges is gonna do the trick or
And
not.
this applies across all three of these, basically.
Yes, yeah. So some of the things we'll need, elevation certificates. How many people in the room know if they have one or don't? Oh, great, that's a good start. That makes it a lot easier to do a screening. Historical damages and claims, we can do it with or without it. We have them. The cost estimates we wouldn't ask for until we pass the screening phase. And then, an appraisal, if you have one, if you don't have one, we typically use the tax appraisal for the screening and then, figure out if we're close, whether it's worth paying for an appraisal. And then we have to do an alternatives analysis. Towards the end of the meeting, when we're done with the presentation, I have this data collection sheet that's somewhere over there on the table. So it lists all the things that we would want or need to get started. Pre-calculated benefits. So FEMA's determined, and this applies, we're still trying to remember if it applies only to rep loss and severe rep loss or if it's all properties that's floodplain. And we'll get that answer and confirm it. But for elevations, if the elevation cost is below, if you're in the floodplain, history claims, and the elevation cost estimates are less than $205,000, you can skip the benefit cost analysis. It's assumed automatically eligible. We just had one relatively small house in Darien. It was a 1,300 square foot cape on a foundation. They came in on quite a bit under, a little bit under the 205,000. Acquisition.
And that was the only one you've seen in how long?
We have another one that similar house. These were sort of like the smallest houses inland in Darien. They were very small houses by Darien standard. And there's other things too, like certain houses are cheaper to elevate than others. It's the size. If the first floor is above ground, it's on a regular foundation or a crawl space. Those are easier than like if you're on a slab, which not many places are around here, but it's a big variation in costs. So it's not uncommon to be under that, but for larger houses, it's probably a challenge. The 300, the same rule applies for acquisition, only 323,000, which is some recent changes. I mentioned the discount rate. Those numbers should be flip-flopped actually. So if this is like a week old, this rule actually doesn't take effect until Tuesday of next week. A benefit cost ratio of 0.75, the whole ratio thing, as most people know, but it's like you're saving $1 or more for every dollar you spend. So a ratio of 1 is the bare minimum. We prefer to be at least at 1.5 or higher, just so there's some wiggle room. Because what can also happen is, say you get a $250,000 estimate to do your elevation, and you're just teetering at a benefit cost ratio of 1, and then all of a sudden, like always happens in construction, you find some additional things, that 250 goes up to 280, and all of a sudden your benefit cost ratio is less than 1. That becomes problematic. So we prefer that the ratio be at least 1.2 or higher. If FEMA does 2, just those surprises don't come back to hurt people. With this new change, if with the old discount rate, the BCR is 0.75 or lower, they'll approve it. This is only for brick and FMA. Brand new requirement. At the 3% discount rate, if you have a ratio of 1 or above, and you're in a disadvantaged community or address climate change in your project, you can be eligible. The addressing climate change piece could mean like you use construction materials that emit fewer carbons. I never until recently didn't realize that if you use materials that don't, which are typically more expensive, you can get this kind of added bonus. So those are the 3 programs. there is a handout on the table over there too that has some of these details, and we'll make the slides available. So this is the process, both at the application phase and then post award. The fund doesn't go away after you get the grant. So the boxes up there, the white ones are sort of your responsibility. The blue ones are things we can help with. So first thing is to decide you want to move forward. Then the next thing we do is gather the information on this data collection form and do a BCA screening to determine whether you look like you're within range of eligibility. If the screening comes back looking positive, we could do the remainder of the data gathering, the research on the losses, the research on the replacement values, and all of the narrative arguments that we need to make in the application to FEMA. Ideally, we'll need an elevation certificate. It seems like a majority have them. If you don't have one, they're like $1,200 these days, I think. An appraisal, if needed, would be on you. Contractor bids would be on you. We can help with that, and we will review that. Paul in this business, etc. So we get to this point and have all the data collected. We do a full-on benefit cost analysis to submit with the application. We write up a narrative on the environmental and historic preservation review that we'll need to do a little analysis of permits that are needed, do a technical feasibility review of any engineered drawings or things like that that you get, which you probably won't need to get at this phase. And then we'll actually do the grant application preparation and the annual draw.
Yeah, I actually have all the white boxes, but the appraisal, how old, like I have one that moved into my house a year ago. If I have an appraisal, is there have to be more up to date, or
that's up to you and how you feel about the appraisal you have. Like
I'm happy about it.
Yeah, people will go with the tax appraisal.
The tax appraisal,
so yeah, market's changed a lot in the last couple of years. Yeah. We did get into that a little bit in the area. Like we had one elderly couple. Their house was probably worth $100,000 more than the benefit cost analysis would support, but the tax appraisals had it at the right number, and we're willing to take it to get out of there because they flooded it 3 times, over a couple $100,000 claims each time. So that the value piece, FEMA's fairly reasonable about not pushing back on that hard because then they know that the tax appraisals are typically low.
Yes.
So, but they'll tell you if you want a different number, just get an appraisal, and they usually don't question the appraisal. Okay. So the application goes in, typically takes 3 or 4 months worth of review, sometimes up to 6 maybe for it to be approved. Once it's approved, you go through the contracting process with the town, and then you go through the post-award process. So there's the grant agreement between FEMA and the state, which takes some time. The sub-grantee agreement between the state and FEMA, and whenever you contract with the state, it's a very lengthy, drawn-out process. Unfortunately, not trying to scare people away. I'm just trying to be honest. It takes a while. Then there's the contract between the state and the property owner, usually very, very simple contract saying, here's the grant application, here's the grant. You agree to do what it says in this schedule on this budget. Then it goes on to permitting and approval, which is usually very simple for these types of projects. Engineering if needed. Obviously you don't need engineering for acquisition, but you do need like lead and asbestos testing. Then comes the updated benefit cost analysis for anything that's changed in terms of based on the design if you're elevating or anything else. So that gets tweaked, resubmitted to FEMA. Then the demolition or elevation work actually happens. It's very, very important to well document all the costs and document all the payments because at the end you'll need to show, in the case of elevation, that you need to prove that you elevated it to the exact elevation you were supposed to. that you follow, basically that you did everything exactly the way you said you were gonna do it, the grant application. And then, if it's an acquisition, there would be a deed transfer to the town. That deed is restricted, nothing can be built on that parcel, in perpetuity. But you're off the hook. The town takes over the property, has it for maintenance. That happens at the acquisition, and then the final closeout. The closeout is really just reviewing the as-built. Did you do it right? You need to provide proof that everybody got paid, that the budget was, intact, and then you get the final reimbursement check.
What period of time do you want? So for instance, when you make a full weekend, you go through the process, here's your grant. Do you have a 12-month period? You have 24 months? When do you have to get it done?
I think usually for elevations, they give you 3 years. They give you a generous amount.
They give you time, all right, it's not like,
They give people 3 years usually, and then a lot of people get into starting to do it, change their mind and say, they're flooded in 4 or 5 years. So there's a lot of them that fall through the cracks in that period of time. But they do give you plenty of time.
So when you look at this,
That's right.
when you look at what are the big lead time items? You mentioned that it would be very, very difficult to hit deadlines, right? Even the one that had been extended. Where does that happen? Is it just the application process, or is it the data gathering phase?
If you have an elevation certificate, an appraisal you can live with, if you want to do elevation, the contractor bids, if you have all of that stuff or can get it in a couple of weeks, there'd be enough time to, well, just this audience surprised me. The vast majority of people usually don't have the elevation certificates for the appraisals, and then of course getting the estimates, it usually takes time.
And with regard to the estimates, I mean, how useful are those? Because this process is a very long one, right? Is it just to get your foot in the door and get the application in front of folks?
Yeah.
And then is that why you run second cost benefit analysis like down the line?
Yeah.
Because we all know how those numbers can change.
Exactly. Yeah. So, if you get an estimate that says 250,000 and the BCA is given a 1.1 at 250,000. So that's why we try to.
To get contractor fees, I mean, don't you probably already need to invest something to get the contractor bids, like the architects or whatever engineers to define what's being done?
Most of them will provide, they'll provide bids without that. But a lot of times they will have an engineer that they do business with who will provide the actual drawings. It's usually really simple drawings. Right. But they will help you with that.
So looking at the benefit cost analysis, take a little related to this question. I'm assuming since it covers just all the infrastructure, the elevation, the base, the foundation, et cetera. And then there's going to be other things work out to that's not covered and not part of it. Is it such that you can run these in parallel, right? I'm getting a quote on the bare basics, and that's what I use for my cost analysis. I use my application. I also have a separate quote. I work with architects, so it doesn't look stupid like a house in sticks.
Yeah.
And I can execute that also in parallel, or is it such that I have to sort of do the bare minimum, say, look, that's done, and then quickly my. How does that work?
The one I just submitted in Darien, they had all that stuff was in the process estimates they got, and the contractors did a great job. We literally just went through the cost estimates, strung out the lines that we knew people was going to pay for, and made a new total. It's not a huge step.
Okay. And then in terms of the execution of it later, when you're doing it, it's okay that more work's been done and you're not submitting because that wasn't, so that's okay. So you don't have to do the project in 2 steps.
Yeah, in fact, they way back in the 90s when I was doing the stuff, Westport used to do a vision staff. They wasn't actually allowed. They were doing alcohol demolition rebuild. So you could submit an application to say it's going to cost $300,000 to elevate my house, it produces a positive benefit cost ratio. Give me the 300,000, tear it down, build a new one, and just pay me the 300,000. FEMA now allows that, and the reason they do now is because you build a new house, it's compliant with all these other codes, it's a safer house all around. Yes, I didn't forget to go.
Yeah, so initial cost benefit analysis showed it's proved. And it sounds like the timeline from that to getting to contractor bid, be anywhere from a year to year and a half. Right? And then after that, by the time we get the next cycle of cost benefit analysis, saying, say the impact of inflation, supply chain loads is subsided, and that actually improves the cost benefit, say like 1.7, do you rescind that
No,
transfer amount?
no,
Or we're going to get amount, whatever was approved at that point.
there's wiggle room within the benefit cost ratio. So like, if it's approved, this is an approved $250,000 project, and it goes up to 270 or something because of changes in the market, and that doesn't impact the benefit cost ratio in a negative way, then they'll usually work with you.
I said we improved to 50, because that's based off of what the original contractor did. But actually, the unit prices for all the labor and everything else that cheaper than the one a year and a half ago, and we only need 200. Do we lose the 50?
What's a reimbursement goes?
It's a reimbursement program, so they would improve it on an initial process. But because it's reimbursement, yeah, you wouldn't get to pocket the extra 50 days.
It starts it. On a unit basis, even though dollars will be the same.
Not on things that aren't eligible, so like you couldn't do the architectural stuff. They're looking to pay just for what care about aesthetics or anything like that.
From the homeowner, I note the line final reimbursement. So is the entire amount paid by the homeowner during this progression, and then at the end of this rainbow, they get a check for whatever the subsidized part is?
No, typically it's quarterly, so the sub-grantee, the town or the county submits for reimbursement requests for their quarterly reporting. So if by some miracle somebody had all the work done in 1 quarter, you have to make an arrangement with your contractors to say like, whatever your arrangement is for progress payments with your contractors, depending on the time amount spans. You can submit that stuff as you get it through the sub-grantee, and it goes.
Well, as a mechanical issue, is the homeowner paying over time 100% of this and getting back their portion on an ongoing basis?
Over time, yes. A lot of times the town will do that. The town will make those payments. In fact, I think that's probably most of the time.
So someone asked the question about the time. I think the missing piece is the towns are all different, right? So Sanford may say, we want to do this right now. Westport might say, we want to do this the next cycle. So we don't know the answers to that question yet. And we'll need Todd's help on that because that's where the COG is actually player in this.
Absolutely, like one of the towns I'm working in, the town doesn't want to do any of the work. They want us to do all of it. And so the homeowners don't have a day-to-day go-to. And so it's taken, we started some applications or the PCA screening in like January. We're just submitting applications now, but it's because they didn't have most of these white boxes. They didn't have a lot of support from their town. So it does vary a lot by how active the COG or the town wants to be.
My question relates to that. These are annual programs, or at least 2 of them, right? You mentioned, Scott, I think you mentioned that could potentially get shelved. If you put it in January and you kind of missed the deadlines for this year, it gets shelved. Either of those reviewed on a first come, first served basis at a specific point in time in the year.
They would probably, knowing the state, they would probably wait to review them until the period opens or the next period opens. We could push them to review them sooner. The thing is, they would want us to refresh them again when the application period is open, but we try to do pre-meetings with the state. So we could say like, the entity will sometimes say like, this is what's coming your way. What are your problems with it before we even submit it? And that because they do what's called request for information. So what after you submit it, there's back and forth, like cross the side or this T and dot the side. Where did you come up with that number, et cetera. So we try to do pre-meetings before submittal to eliminate as much of that as we can. But the state is pretty good about wanting them to progress through. In fact, the bigger problem right now is that states are not spending. They're not able to spend the amount of money that's being provided. So they're really having decided to they want us.
Quick question, last time after Sandy, you know how many elevation grants were given? I mean, was there statistics around it in terms of, you know, how many people applied and actually did it? Because I know when I was going through the process, there was a lot of chatter around people going through the process, but never actually seeing money. So, you know, that's the part that worries me.
A lot of them probably failed at the BCA, or a lot of people just get frustrated with the process that hasn't flooded in a few years, so they say that with it.
No, they actually went through. They started the elevation.
Oh, they started.
And then, you know, there was like, you know, all over whatever, whatever. They're like still waiting on the money.
I've not heard of that, but okay, being a problem. People usually, shockingly, everything they do is extremely slow, except they usually pay on time.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Dave, do you have any answers already? I didn't answer part about how many, I don't know.
Just curious.
I think it was very, who's here from Greenwich? Someone was, right? Yeah, so they really were pushing for elevations and probably 10 to 15 after Hurricane Sandy, or am I way off? The one's funded by FEMA.
Yeah, probably sounds about right.
About that many, yeah. But I don't think other towns did nearly that many.
I think there was quite a large handful in the area.
I think part of it, I heard it was an extremely frustrating process in Greenwich, but people working at town hall, apparently invested a lot of time and effort in helping people get it done.
Yep.
And it was still extremely frustrating.
What was frustrating about it? Which part?
Again, I think it's similar to what he says, which is the details, right? It's like, you know.
So like, was the money paid out?
No, the money was paid out, no problem. Yeah, ultimately, if you persevere through the entire process, which took a long time, you know, for the application and everything to get done. If you have the tenacity to get through that and do the project, you got it. There was no problem.
The problem is most of these towns are doing it.
Yeah.
Somebody who already has a full-time job is trying to do it in addition to their full-time job. So that's why it's great when people like Todd can find a grant. You know. Paul, did you have a question?
Well, Sandy was in the relations funny. But, lunch was funny.
Yes. Good point. All right, data collection discussion. I already talked about all this. On the back table, there's one page right here that just tells us the data that we would want to get going with. If you wanted to get started, we need to know what you're interested in, whether you consider. Yeah, so things like the flood zone, if you take this and do it on your own and send it back to us, don't feel compelled to get all of this stuff. You don't need all of it to get started with the screening. The elevation certificate honestly is the most important piece. The property cards we can get ourselves. The claims data is important. If you have a recent appraisal that you're satisfied with, that would be great. If you don't, we can use the appraisal plus 20% or 10% or whatever. So yeah, I don't want to hold people up waiting to get one piece of all of this.
Obviously, the timing, the appraisal matters. What about the elevations? If your home hasn't changed, does it matter?
No, it doesn't. People get thrown off by that all the time because the elevations have turned as an expiration shade at the bottom. But that only means the issue in one at the time. If you have one from 10 years ago, as long as nothing's changed, it's still.
If it's old data, we can convert it. It's in the old.
Yeah. What we do, if you don't have one, the state has a LiDAR topographic data set. It's really like fine granular topographic data. We literally go to the GIS mapping of your house and see what topographic line it lines up to. We look at pictures on Zillow and measure the ground up to your first floor. So we can do a screening, do stuff like that. But if you have this, it's a lot more accurate. And then just in the description part, just a little narrative about any flooding you've had, when it was, where the water came in, did it come into the first floor, what did it do, what did the contents sit down, just as much information as you can provide. Yeah. So
who should we send this to be clear? What email is to Scott?
Yeah, let me.
Why don't we use you to start?
Yeah, so we also on the table up here have a sign up sheet. So with a group this small, I know it's getting late, but we're willing to stay a little bit if people want to talk about individual cases. If not, there's a sign up sheet up there that has your name, contact information, address, email, at a preferred time. If you want somebody to reach out to you, we can do one-on-one meetings.
That's on there.
Okay. The only thing that doesn't have is the preferred. Yeah, it's.
It strikes me that we like the Westport.
Oh, the slide, he wants the slide with the, yeah.
Westport one day.
Yeah, we'll work with you to figure out how to do one-on-one meetings, but honestly, if we do that on Zoom or something, if you get us most of this stuff, we can get started we don't have a whole lot more to tell you than we have it already, so it's really better just getting the data and getting started.
So it has sent to you, that's your kind.
Yeah.
How do we engage?
Todd, I believe you're gonna post this up at WestCOG.
It's going to be on the WestCOG website. We'll be posting it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so it's just WestCOG.org.
Yeah.
Grab Todd's card, because I think there's a missing from his email address.
Oh,
Yes, there is. Thank you. Yeah, grab my business card is on the table.
so initial information goes to Todd.
Scott.
It should go to Scott.
Question.
Yeah.
So all this is going to you as a consultant for WestCOG. Do they need to do anything additional for their own towns? The Westport, whatever?
Great.
So that's a little bit on us, right? That's sort of why WestCOG has us on board to start to get those conversations going. As Scott alluded to, we have discussions already with Darien because we've been working with them already. But I have some experience working with Westport from a year ago. So Stockton Island Taxing District, which I don't know if you all live in, but you might. It's not the whole way to Mass, but they were trying to get a grant going about a year ago, and the town at the time just couldn't support it. So we want to have that discussion. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah,
Reach out to the town.
that is a great point there.
Well, we went down to the building department. We raised the house. And we would have gone higher. And said, we have a height, right, we're south. And so it's like, really? But fine, we went through that entire process. We went down to the building department lane, so this we're not going to throw these unless we know we can actually get elevation. So to take the building up 2 feet, 13 plus 1 feet. They said, yeah, we have a problem. Coverage. And they said they'll grant you some relief. And they seem reasonable about it, but there's a lot of subjectivity, I would say, with the way it's.
Well, no, the question that comes before that, of course, is are you going to support the season, this grant season? But, you know, we need to know that first, so we'll.
Yeah, we can't, yeah. So then the guy I was talking to would have a clue about that.
Right, yeah, it's different departments.
Yeah. There are towns in the state that say we don't want to help individual homeowners with elevation projects because then we have 100 other people mad at us because we're not doing it. So, so we will need to do that. I think the COG is willing to potentially be a sub-grantee. I think
Possibly,
but you really, that's only a remedy if the town says, you know, we support this, but we just can't do it. Will you do it for us? If the town is against it, I don't think the COG is going to want to do it.
since the CEO is a member of our COG.
Right. Oh, but I think there might be some towns that would say, like, we don't want to do this because we don't have the resources, but if you're willing to have that.
Right.
When you say resources, what do you mean?
People resources.
Not money resources.
Right.
So in Westport, also there's this area that's still alluded to, Dead Man's Brook. I think there was a $500,000 study done regarding it because when there's a big rain, it floods. It floods houses, floods commercial properties. I have commercial property. Somebody mentioned to me the town's not willing to get involved in this. Do you know anything about that specific? Because it encompasses a large number of properties.
I've heard of the problem with that. That's where this.
Yeah, I think that was part of the CDBG. I don't know why they would have reached that conclusion, but we're flooding.
So would you do something like improve the width of the culverts? Or is this
sure.
only to raise
Do you have my
properties
card?
higher and let the water go where it goes?
So the HMDP and the BRIC program will both need to be updated to some extent. We'll both do projects like that. If it's engineered, there's a solution, and if it proves that it's going to relieve the flooding problem on properties, it's perfectly eligible. It's a bigger project, but.
And we've done separate outreach to the towns about infrastructure projects as part of this project with time. So those discussions have resulted in some projects, but that has not been reached.
So I don't even, and I'm a real estate guy, I don't even know where to start.
Without putting anybody in the spot, how's Westport's chief elected been in these, when you guys have discussed? But
I haven't had any discussions with them on this.
so we'll follow.
And there is a flood erosion control board.
We can reach out and see if there's a design project sitting there on the show, and they want to do it. Who's not there?
No, there was a study, I don't know whether it was an engineered project, and I don't know how many properties are involved. I do know the state was working on a culvert under the Post Road 2 weeks ago for a couple of weeks. But that's sort of the point of the funnel, the culvert. So it has to increase volume all the way back.
We'll check and see if they have something they want to.
It was working to do it in phases too, so they could apply. It's not design yet. They could apply for a design grant 1 year, apply for construction next year.
Did you sign it, sir? Are you on the list?
I did.
Okay.
I didn't realize we had commercial property here too. These also for commercial property, we'll do certain flood proofing projects where instead of elevating or tearing down, you can do flood proofing things.
The either question.
Yeah.
When the water comes up, it's up.
Just Greenwich, I came late, so maybe I missed it, but you guys have been talking a lot about WestCOG and Dewberry. Have you worked with Greenwich, to be clear?
Now, I have not worked on elevations Greenwich. I'm aware of them working on them, and that's why they're Sandy.
Yeah. Is there a reason for that, or, I mean, are you guys, like, would that be an issue working on Greenwich?
No, I think we haven't done work there because the town staff has been engaged and has supported it.
Oh, got it.
That's even more.
And so, sorry, again, I'm new to this, but just to make an inference from your sentence there, you're saying that the town has supported, the homeowner doesn't need to hire an engineer to do this?
No, some towns do a good job of doing it on their own. Other towns do say.
But the homeowner still needs to engage with something, right? Who is this?
Verbally, they would engage through Greenwich, but they can access our help, which is already paid for by the contract.
Or do you mean you don't mean the contractor? You mean?
No, not the contractor.
Yeah, so none of the stuff we talked about tonight is us saying we'll do it. We're like under contract with you. We've already been contracted to the COG to help you, so we can provide application support. If you need an engineering design to go to your house, that's somebody else.
Right, I understand that, but I get, and so sorry, this last question, so who has provided those project management services that you provide to homeowners in Greenwich in the past?
I'm not aware of any consultants that have.
Yeah,
It's more difficult for the town to do this. Very few towns hire people like us.
Nice.
I think it's just been homeowners working.
Got it. So
That's it.
Email the Greenwich. Here's some stuff.
Yeah, back in the day, in Westport, there's a guy named Joe Monroe. He was a retired attorney, and he just helped all of his neighbors do this stuff. And he brought a complete application to the town and gave it to them.
Got it. Okay.
So occasionally, there's people like that around who help out.
I just don't know if Greenwich has the person now because they were very active years ago.
Oh, yeah, that's right. After Sandy, they were very.
Some towns are hiring grant coordinators because there's so much grant money out there right now.
But so I live in Greenwich, so should I be reaching out to you guys, or should I be finding someone at Greenwich Town Hall and bypassing you guys?
You shouldn't bypass the town hall. Well, if you decide you want to move forward and do something, we need to get the town forward.
So we can work on your application. That's the answer. But all the towns, Greenwich, Westport, Stanford, need to be supportive, and we're going to check. We didn't have a sense of which towns we have here tonight. I want to make sure one of the folks here, way back there, you're here over Ida damage.
Yeah.
And that's IA or PA. It's not this. So
Any advice on a deadline problem, resubmitting an application,
sorry, the acronyms. So it sounds like
So
post IDA?
tell us what the problem is one more time.
Well, they came around, did a quick assessment, they did not come in the basement, set up an appointment, whatever. That didn't, and then when I went to a couple months ago, yeah. Oh, record of it. I had 10 inches.
so you filed under individual assistance.
Pardon?
You filed under the program called individual assistance with you, right? Or was it?
You're talking
Well,
about,
they were coming around and surveying, you know, flood damage, rock spring, or basically.
so is this related to a flood insurance claim or?
No, it's just a flood
Okay, so
during.
I think that was part of your assessment.
yeah, so after a disaster, so these are programs to do mitigation after the
I
fact.
understand.
After a disaster, there's two types of assistance available, public assistance and individual assistance. Public assistance pays for things like replacing blown out culverts, fixing roads, pays for police and fire and security and all the things that the town spends money on to
Right.
cover. So that's public assistance. Individual assistance pays for people that have temporary housing, shelter, all the things you need when you're dealing with the problems for your house, but it doesn't pay for the damages to your house. That would have to be flood insurance. So what probably happened is they came around they do what's called preliminary damage assessment. The state and FEMA will go around to every community that got damaged, take a quick survey of what the damage was so that they could put a price tag on the disaster. Part of the price tag they put on a disaster might have included your house, but that's the number they use to submit the to the president to ask for a disaster declaration. So just because they looked at the damage to your house doesn't mean they intended to come back and pay for it, unfortunately. That's about as, without knowing more, that's probably what happened.
So for us, you know, next steps would be to fill out the data request information provided to you. And, at that point, would you help us with the cost, with the benefit cost analysis?
Yeah, we'll do the screening. The very first thing we'll do is the screening. So yeah, the next steps are let us know that you're interested in moving forward and committed to going through all the things. So for this, and the next step after that would be to make sure that the town is on board, or at least supportive. And then with those two pieces, with this data, it's what we have to do screenings. Possible.
I can say that the reason we're here is because our organization, the Regional Council of Governments, our members are the individual communities, and the chief elected officials of the communities were very supportive of us doing this project. So generally speaking, the support is there. Whether individually a specific community has capacity concerns or whatever, that remains to be determined. Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Do you guys, listed contractors who understand the nuances of this process, is that important? And, you know, the folks that you recommend work with to get the initial bids, or can anyone really just, because, you know, I have contractor relationships, but I'm not sure that they understand this process, right?
For the lifting it up, putting it down piece, you want to make sure you actually. The other pieces are really like junk stuff. So we don't really people is we can make one.
Actually, the question, I think the refine on that question is, does the world look any different if I, as a private homeowner, engage one of these guys, or if they have to work on this particular set of restrictions? I think is that.
Yeah, it should.
You have to answer, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard to as it was rigorous. It's a combination of general contracts and they include some of the largest, not only contractors and some of the small. That's a good list.
And that would be made available to us during this process.
But it's publicly available.
Oh, yeah, sorry there. Got it.
It's related to funding foundation. So just where it is. On the Central National Council, which is the equivalent.
It's the Capital Region Council of Governments, which covers the greater Hartford area, crcog.org. crcog.org, yeah.
And COG has this.
Yeah, and there are, also just talking to your neighbors who have had it done. Most of your towns have had people do it, talking to them to see how they like it.
Your question was go with a loan or this sort of thing, I think.
It's kind of interrelated. They listed vetted contractors. I'm assuming that those folks would be familiar with this process, right?
Well, they're not gonna, they won't for an application. They're not gonna.
No, they're used to getting payment from the town, state, and
They can work.
know how
They get this, they got zero, so it's ultimately on you, but.
Somewhat related question. Who pays you? So I mean, you get charges or no?
Never. Everything we do to help you is not free, it's being paid for by a
It's
grant.
being paid by a grant that we went after from our agency.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Nice to.
Thank you. Very helpful.
I hope it is. Well. It's short. Yeah,
Yeah.